Hi, it's Tiffany and Lorraine Galloway. I'm the host of the Resilient Mother podcast, and I started it because of my own journey to resilience. I've done everything I can to gather resources, true stories, and inspiration, and now I'm bringing that to you. And I have a new co-host with me.
So I'm Catherine Tyson Soil, and mothers, we are creating the future. So Tiffany, you and I were on this train together, and I'm very excited about bringing amazing women's stories, mothers, help and resources and excitement, and just learning from you and learning from me and learning from all of us, just how to be resilient, how to take care of ourselves, how to take care of our children, because as we say on the Resilient Mother podcast,
happy mothers, happy children, happy homes is the goal. And that's Hi, it's Tiffany and Lorraine Galloway, certified high performance coach, with another episode of the Resilient Mother podcast. We are starting out this year again with resistance versus resilience. Your journey to resilience all starts with awareness first. And that's what we're going to talk about. What are those things you're fighting, or those things that you need to give more into? Maybe it's your intuition. Maybe it's a gift that you have to give to the world. We're all different. And we're all on our journey. So where do you want to go from here? My guest today is Alexis, and she is going to mentor us from a unique point of view on this. And I'm excited to have this conversation. Alexis, thank you for being here. Please tell us more about you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I didn't want to make you say this because it's a little tricky, but I call myself the Destructrix, and yeah, and part of that is because I kind of specialize in those challenging moments where we have to destroy parts of ourselves in order to like build ourselves back. And I help specifically baby psychics, as I call them, people who are just awakening to their abilities and their gifts and spirituality, and help them navigate that journey so that it's easy and fun and useful.
And what do you find happens with that, with resistance versus resilience? What do those two concepts play into that, and what do those mean to you?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I think, especially for women and for moms, and for those of us who are kind of rediscovering ourselves, we get to our late 30s or early 40s, we're in the like fullness of motherhood and like being the mother. And we have a lot of resistance about owning who we are and accepting who we are, accepting who we want to be. We have resistance about healing ourselves, about taking time for ourselves, about doing the things that we're really called to do that really would actually make us better at everything that we have to do. And so there's the resistance. I feel like it comes from kind of a fear of what's going to happen, right? Like we're afraid, like if we actually spend time on ourselves, what will that do? Who will we become? How will that change our relationships? Maybe we have a spouse, or maybe we're looking for a partner. How will that change like how we're parenting? I mean, what kinds of expectations can we have about that? And so we tend to shrink back and hide and struggle with that, because part of us really wants that, and part of us is just like, what's gonna happen if I do this?
Well, and I think too, we can kind of get comfortable in just nurturing that natural inclination to take care of everyone else, sacrifice ourselves, which it shouldn't have to be a sacrifice. You don't have to sacrifice yourself to be nurturing, to be loving, to take care of others. In fact, you can give more when you're more true to yourself. When you give to yourself first, your cup has to be full and overflowing in order to give to others. Absolutely. So I think part of the problem with not being willing to explore that is then we don't really ever know what our full capacity is for what we can truly do. Yeah, but we have to build a muscle of resilience instead. We have to accept that it's not going to necessarily be easy to get there, that there may be some challenges to get there, but that it'll be worth it in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big things that I find with a lot of my clients, and they tend to be in that kind of bracket, that age bracket, like 35 to 55 women, they're successful, they're brilliant, they're talented, and yet they're like, what, like something's missing here. Like I'm not really doing what I want to be doing. And
Mhm.
so how can I get there? And the struggle is, I mean, a lot of times we already know, but we just need someone to kind of pull us out of our shell and really start exploring it and give us permission, right? It's okay. It is safe and good and correct for you to be who you are meant to be. And once they start to do that, it's amazing the stuff that happens. Like you find when you really embrace who you are authentically, you start yeah, you may lose friends. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, the relationship may break.
Yeah.
And maybe it was time,
Yeah.
maybe it was time for that. And that's okay, because then there are these wonderful things that fill the space,
Yeah.
right? And that's when you can build your capacity. And that's also like the other part, as far as uh building greater resilience, yes, when you're being your authentic self, it's easier to be resilient. And also, you have to build those self-care practices. And that goes for different types of self-care, whether it's spiritual, emotional, financial, physical. I mean, we're talking about, like, sometimes I have to tell people, I'm like, do you have a reminder set to drink water?
Yeah.
Because you need to.
Yeah.
This is part of the deal.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah. And it's simple things. It doesn't have to be complicated. I think sometimes we may overcomplicate something that could be simply fixed, like a reminder on your phone to drink
Yeah,
water. That's easy, that's simple, that's doable.
totally.
Or I have a super busy schedule. Well, just do 5 minutes of something you love every day to find out what that is that fills you up. 5 minutes. You can give yourself 5 minutes. And if it goes over a little bit, but you gave yourself 5 minutes. I was
Totally.
doing some research as a single parent, and one-on-one with my kids is really tricky on your own, I will
Yeah.
say. But I found out that if I can just give them 5 minutes a day of my
Mhm.
uninterrupted attention, where they get to choose those 5 minutes with me, if
Yeah,
it's more, great. But maybe some days all I can fit in is 5 minutes. It's enough because
it
it's
is.
intentional, I'm present, and I'm there. And
Yeah.
so, and that's not complicated. That's just
No,
showing up. But I also have to
yeah.
show up present, authentic. I have to be centered. I have to know how to get there too. So
Yeah.
there's that kind of balance in that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like one of the things that I've started doing is I like to go to pickup a little bit early.
Mm.
And that removes the stress of like trying to find I don't like to drive up to the door. I like to park a little ways away, and then I have, extra time that there's nobody there yet. I get to sit there and I will play a guided meditation that I created for myself, and I will do a little mini meditation in the middle of the day right before I'm picking up my kid, and then I'm like,
Yeah.
it's just like it's less than 10 minutes of time. It's not a big deal. It's not very difficult to do. And it's just a little way that I can build that into my day.
Yeah.
And so it's finding those little pieces and those little ways that you can have like bite-sized snacks
Mhm.
of self-care, of capacity building. It's just the little things. It's just like I recently saw someone talking about exercise snacks, and they're like, it builds up over the course of the day. And I'm like, it really does. But you can apply that to anything. And that's how like it's the difference between like just applying your face lotion and giving yourself a facial massage as you're doing it. It
Mhm.
just is that extra thing that is showing you that you deserve care, that you have value, that you're important. And that just makes it a lot easier when you have to rush around and gather everything to do drop off.
Well, and you don't have to do everything at once. I like that
Exactly.
you were doing something already and you just added to it. So you're already putting your facial lotion on. Why not take the time to massage? You're already
Yeah.
picking up your kids. you're adding to it. So it's not,
Exactly.
it's not change everything at once.
No.
Overhaul, redo,
No.
redesign, refix. It's just little things. And if you can do one at a time and build that up to habit over 21 days or a couple weeks, and then add another one, like just one little thing at a time. But you do have to become aware of what those things are and experiment to get curious and figure out what works for you, what works for your schedule, what works for your family. There's no wrong answer here.
There isn't. I think that's one of the things that stops a lot of people. That's the resistance, right? They're worried that they're going to do the wrong thing. And it's like the wrong thing is not starting.
Yeah.
That's the wrong thing. Yeah. If you just, and like, it doesn't matter because, you know, I just described a practice that I'm doing right now, but you know, I've done a ton of different kinds of practices like that at different times that have looked slightly different, that have worked for my life at different times in different ways. And it's okay. Like if you outgrow something or something doesn't work, you can let go of it. The issue is not like, that you have, like, it's not that you have to do it a certain way. It's more like I'm a person who meditates. And so I'm going to meditate in some way. It doesn't matter what way it is. I'm a person who takes care of myself. It doesn't matter what those ways that you care for yourself, just that you do.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't have to be every single day. It's just more often than not. You know, if you're doing it 3 times a week, that's great. You know, like just because you don't do it today doesn't mean like, oh, it's all screwed up. I can't do it ever again. Please.
Yeah. Especially being a mom with multiple children that evolve and change, and like what worked yesterday, all of a sudden, whoop, that's not working with that kid at that time this way anymore. Okay, how do we turn this around? And I do my best to like schedule things and have my priorities and my attention and my intentions. And I'll do block time for things, but I find sometimes I have to move those blocks. Like a kid needs me, they're sick. Yeah, we move that somewhere else. And I love another practice that a mom shared on here of like having her must do and would like to list so that she knows what she wants to get to. And then if she has a window, here are some other things that I would like to do if I get the chance. Totally. And that way you don't feel like you're missing out on anything. Like life can be very full and very rich, but there's some flexibility and some fluidity that has to be in there with it until you find your flow. And that flow may change and be inevitable. But it's your job to like keep yourself at a frequency close enough to that frequency to know when you need to tune in, to be in tune with, am I being true to myself? Am I being centered? Am I being present? And if you haven't experienced that yet, it's just a matter of discovering it and having the time to do it. And then once you discover it, what's beautiful is then your kids are going to be able to discover that. They're going to be able to explore what works for them, what their practices are, because they get to choose. I have kids that are with me, and then sometimes they're at their dad's house, and what's done there is different than done here. And I just try to embrace, oh, you get to see both. You get to experience both. So guess what? Someday you get to choose which ones to keep from here and which ones to keep from here. That's you, that you get to decide that, and you have that agency. And I think that's kind of the key to it too. Like, I think we resist things sometimes because we think we don't have a choice. We don't have the agency for it, but we always have a choice. We always have agency every day and every choice that we make.
And I think that it's, I mean, the important thing is like, once you make a choice, that's not like the end. Yeah. I think that I find a lot of people have this like, oh God, I made this choice. It's like, and that either stops them from doing it, or they're like, okay, I've made this choice, and like escalation of commitment. And I'm like, why would you do that? Like, it's not that big a deal. Do you know how much, like, if you're in midlife, you've still got 40, 50 years to do things like, God, we better not be the end, or else we're really like, you know, like, yes. I mean, go all in. I mean, I one of the things that I feel like it really helps. I don't know if you, actually I have it right here. The 10X is easier than 2X, that book.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's a great book, right? I have it right here. But I love this idea of like, okay, what are your big, scary dreams? What are the big, scary things that you want to do? And, you know, then you hold that in mind, and like, yeah, you might not actually achieve them, but at least you're working towards it. So you'll get somewhere, it's like you shoot for the moon, you end up in the stars kind of concept, right? And so this kind of idea, I often use this with my clients, talking about like, what do you really want to do? What is your soul really yearning for? Where do you really want to go? And then they say it and they're like, but I don't know how to get there. I was like, you don't need to know how to get there. You just need to think about who is that person who has that thing, and then what would they do right now?
Yeah.
And then you just start doing it. And when you let your intuition kind of allow the path to unfold and find it, and then you're like, okay, yeah, it's fine. And you start to trust that even if things don't work out the way that you thought you wanted them to work out in that moment, you just trust that there's something better that's coming for you, and it's fine. Like it will be fine. And I think that also kind of helps with that resilience piece, because you start to really see like a bigger picture, and you start to really kind of enjoy even like the little hiccups and the challenges that come to you. You're like, you know what? I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this to my advantage. It's here for me. Like some stuff might suck. It happens.
That's life.
Yeah, it's life. Life can life. But and that's okay. That's good and correct for it to be like that, because those are opportunities that you can use to become more powerful, more yourself, more in every way. And that, I think, ultimately is why we're here. I would say ultimately the reason we're here is to be ourselves. But I do think it's really important that that we spend that time thinking about those big scary dreams and working towards that who we are, because I don't think that we just have those big scary dreams just because. I think that's like, those are the yearnings of our soul, and that's what will kind of take us on that journey that we're supposed to go.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
And we can be resisting those desires, and we can be resisting them because we have somebody else's expectations in our head. We have some other outside validation that we're seeking instead of the inside validation that this is right for me and this is my truth. I feel like that's been the story of my life, is like coming back to my truth after lots of abuse and trauma and different things that just threw off who I naturally was. And when I come into myself, I'm amazed at who I end up attracting, or with the opportunities that come. And then I'm like, oh, that was okay. Like it is okay to be me. That I am meant to be who I am in this moment, with you in this moment, with my kids in this moment. Like this is life. This is the flow. And the more that I accept it and I embrace it, the more beautiful it becomes, because I see it for what it is. And I don't get caught up in the visceral or the noise of anything else. I get to be completely present with it. And then you get to enjoy it. Whereas it can be fleeting otherwise. Like it can pass and you can be like, oh, I missed something here. And you can't force it either. I think that's the other thing is, like, I love my mom, but like she tries to create experiences and then forces some kind of outcome. She wants this outcome, that she wants it to be this way. And the best things in life don't happen by force. They like are spontaneous. They just create themselves in a sense. And I think when we resist or we put expectations on somebody that are just not realistic or too high, or that isn't their truth, like we're trying to put something on them that doesn't belong with them, we're not teaching them to trust their intuition. We're not teaching them to trust their gut and their voice and who they are. And I think that's really the struggle in the dance, is, as a mother in particular, is how do I teach my child to resist the right things, the things that aren't for them, versus not the things that are true for them? And then how do I let them fail and fall and get back up so that they build their own resilience muscle? Because I can't just give them the answers. And even I can give them my observations, and I can praise them for something that I'm like, oh, you have an innate talent in this, or thank you for doing that, or whatnot. But ultimately they decide who they are. They decide what's true for them. I don't. And
Yeah.
I don't want to put that on them, but I do want to guide them and nurture them and give them the same opportunity I want to give myself to find my truer self, to find my higher self, to build that identity. And I think that's a lot of it is the story we're telling ourselves, and then who do we identify as? And in my coaching, I'll find the breakthrough point with people is in those two things, the story they're telling themselves and their identity. And if they can see where they're going or not, if they can see that they're the author of their story or not, and if they can trust themselves to write that story and that they can create whatever they want.
Yeah. Well, and that that's really scary, I think, for a lot of people is realizing when you realize how much power you actually have.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true.
It's like, oh shit. Like you're like, oh my God, like what am I like, then you're like, wow. I mean, if you realize like, oh, I'm creating my reality right now. I mean, just like, what? No, you are. You totally are. Like every choice that you're making, every action you're taking, you're making your reality, and it's that whole like form follows function. We talk about like how the physical body follows the shape of the choices that you've been making. Like that's a physical manifestation of choices that have compounded over years, right? I mean, that's years, and you see it, anywhere you look, you can see that to some degree. I mean, like you see, like these are physical manifestations of the spirit, right? Of the choices that we've made. And so it's like, oh man, like I have a lot of power here.
Yeah.
What do I do with it?
And I think it's so ironic to hear people being like, I think it's ironic when people are like, are you scared of success? Like, like they're on a roll or something and you see them stop or self-sabotage or something. It's like,
oh yeah,
you're in flow. Like you're all lit up. Like you're excited. Like, why are you stopping? Keep going.
But that's one of those things, like that's the resistance, right? Like that's when you have like the trauma pattern is showing its head, like there's some unresolved issue. And that's the point, right? Either they're going to fall and they're going to have to redo the whole thing until they get to that point again, where they'll have another opportunity to fix it, or they fix it. They move through it. They figure out how to resolve it or whatever. They're doing the inner work, those kinds of things, and they move through it. I just had a client who had a huge situation come to a head, a big family thing. And it was ugly and it was messy and it was awful. And she was like, I've done like all this stuff and I feel like I'm backsliding. I'm like, no, you're not backsliding. This is an opportunity. Take it. Like, yes, it sucks. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's painful. And it's going to be rough and it's going to be a little exhausting. I'm not going to lie. And it's going to feel shock. There's some shock there. There's some grief there. There's a lot of stuff happening. That's all normal for that particular situation. It was a very difficult situation for her. And she moved through it with grace. Yay. And it was because of all the work that we had done together, it was because of all that work. And I'm sure you've seen that with your clients as well. It's just like, you just have to do the work. And so many people, they hit that point because it happens. Everybody has these points. Yep. You have these patterns, you work through them at a lower level, whatever, and they rear themselves up again in a different way because there's some little bit that you haven't worked on that you need to work on. And that's just, that's your opportunity. You have to see it as an opportunity and just identify as the person that, no, I work through these things. I resolve these things. I fix these things. I conquer these things. These things are not the boss of me. I'm the boss of them.
And it's just that refining process. I have gold behind me because I like gold as a reminder of like being through the refiner's fire. Like gold isn't pure. The impurities aren't out until it's been through a lot of heat. A diamond isn't made without a ton of pressure. And then there are these beautiful luminescent lights that reflect so much of like what we have the potential to be. And Absolutely. I'd like to speak a little bit about what we kind of started with before we got on about, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Yeah. Like, I think that's a part that gets disconnected sometime. And I know you work more in that realm of the spiritual health of people. And that can look different, whether you have faith or not, just that higher power as part of trusting that as part of who we are, our intuition, because there are energy systems. There's more than just this physical being. And sometimes we think about, well, if I get healthy, if I get enough sleep, if I work on the relationships, I do all these things, and you can still feel like something's off. And I think sometimes it's that spiritual thing, because that's not something we embrace as much in the Western culture as the Eastern culture does. And I think we're getting better, and we're opening up as the world opens up to understanding that a lot more. But it's not something we've totally discussed on here before. And I'm just interested on your insight with that, and resilience and resistance.
So, I actually find that a lot of people who do spiritual, when you do spiritual work, it has physical consequences. So for example, I have a client that they have chronic illness. Okay. A lot of us have chronic illness, all different kinds, right? And they also had uncontrolled psychic abilities. They hadn't learned to create spiritual boundaries. They hadn't learned, and a lot of people do. I'm going to say it: to be human is to be psychic, and that's like part of my work. I do is kind of destigmatizing that and bringing acceptance to that, and being able to use it in our daily lives. So this person, I helped them do some work with their clairsentience, which is somatic psychic knowing. Some people call it, like empath stuff. That's a very popular term. I think that that's a little bit of a misnomer, and it gets confused, but it's really a somatic psychic knowing. So a lot of people have this, when you say, use your gut, that's clairsentience. The hairs on the back of your neck stand up, clairsentience. You get a weird feeling, that's clairsentience. You see somebody and you've got like, you get, your chest feels tight just looking at them, and you're like, I don't know, but I don't like them. That's clairsentience. Most people feel really comfortable with that because it's easy to talk about. And so they'll mention that, so it's more socially acceptable. So most people, when they are engaging with psychic knowing, that's their first taste. This particular client of mine, she was having a lot of somatic feelings, a lot of sensations that she was reading as chronic illness. Well, what we did is we created boundaries for her, and we worked through that, and we channeled it a little bit better. And all of those chronic illness symptoms went away.
How interesting.
You're like, wait a second, really? Oh yeah. You can use different kind of spiritual boundaries to do all kinds of physical healing, actually, and support physical body. Like I get migraines. And so I will use some of my spiritual techniques to help dampen the pain or move the migrainous energy through me and kind of disperse it. And that will help me, like if my Tylenol is not working, if I have like a tea, or tinctures and stuff that I use, if they're not doing it, I'll be like, okay, I need like a little bit of an extra kick. And so I'll use that. And it doesn't hurt anything. It's not change, it's just moving the energy, because sometimes we have stuck energy in our physical bodies. And I don't know if I'm sure somebody has referenced this book, but The Body Keeps the Score. This concept this is real. I mean, this is what acupressure works with, and acupuncture, Reiki, all of those things work with moving spiritual energy. And so, it has physical consequences, whether we're looking at it from like a psychic, I'm going to build my intuition, or if we're looking at it for like physical healing. It still has physical consequences, and there's lots of ways that we can use it to our advantage and our benefit.
I love that, because I think it's not something we always think about, and the body definitely doesn't lie, but like that spiritual energy aspect of it is something new I've discovered in my healing process, and that is super helpful. And it was just something that's like, I grew up in the church. I have this faith, but I don't have a connection with these things in that sense of, it's something that I need to maintain and take care of and be aware of, and understand what, my gifts may or may not be. Like, I don't know, my connection's a lot to music, like music and me, like there's just some flow there that I can't put words on, but it might be something different for somebody else. And it's okay to explore that, because there are definitely healing properties in there. And it's not something I feel like we need to resist as much. It's not so woo woo, as you said, I think there are boundaries around it. There are things that can always be taken to the extreme that should not be. And it's those things that we hear about, unfortunately, in a lot of cases where something was taken too far or not done properly. And so
I mean, I think it's important to just like caveat, like I would say that these are complementary. Like obviously you still want to like be, you know, seeing a therapist for mental wellness. You still want to be seeing a medical doctor. You know, if you have like, if you break an arm, you need a cast or surgery or whatever. Like don't like avoid medical treatment. These are complementary therapies. These are good for people who have like chronic illness and like those kinds of things. And they're good also for, you know, if you're talking about, mental illness. I'm not just talking about like these can be complementary in a lot of different ways. If you have trauma or stuff like that, I mean, that's the skeletons. I mentioned before we got on here that I do I help people with ghosts and skeletons, right? We talk about the spirit, but we also talk about the skeletons that we have in our closet. And let's face it, we all have both. So it's good to look at the whole person and talk about all of the things and support people in a complete way. And that's when we can really be super resilient.
Oh, I agree. What are some tools and strategies a mother could use, like for herself or for her kids, to like create this wholeness that we're talking about? I think we're really talking about being whole and not resisting any way of being that could complement our ability to be resilient.
Yeah, I mean, I think like one of the things that I really stress, and I do this with my own kids, you know, what are your yearnings? What is you could, I mean, I do this with my clients as well. Like, what's your heart telling you? You can connect to your heart, or what's your gut telling you? Those kinds of things, as much as you can, to learn to recognize and trust your intuitive nudges. And you can actually do this with kids. Like kids get it. They are super sensitive to these things. They get it. My son, my oldest, he's really good at following his intuition. He uses it to find his Legos out of a giant bin, but he also uses it for other things. And so it's, you know, this is like not a big, like, you don't have to be like woo to do this. Like, this doesn't require any particular beliefs or anything, but just noticing like when you have those little nudges. It could be a quiet thought. It could be a gut feeling. It could be like a feeling of like bigness, you know, expansion in your body, release and relief or joy that's bubbling up, and follow them, you know, follow those little intuitive nudges. I think that's really important to honor them, because those are the deepest yearnings of your soul. Those are the things that your higher self is showing you. That's the path that you're meant to go on. And it's going to be good. Your intuition is always going to be good. It's never a bad thing. It's never going to lead you to harm. It's always going to be good. So it's safe and good and correct for you to trust your intuitive nudges, whatever those little nudges might be, whether they're gut feelings, whether like they're quiet, soft, sweet voice, or it's some kind of physical, you know, like, I feel, you know, like the joy. And I think that, you know, that's the other thing, is just to really pay attention to your body. I know a lot of spiritual people don't talk about the body as being very important, but I feel like that's key. Your body is an amazing, amazing gift that you have in this life. And it will always tell you the truth. And so you need to pay attention to all of those little signs. When you're having like a little bit of pain somewhere, or you're having like a little bit of like, oh, this is what nervousness feels like, you know, okay, I'm going to pay attention to that. And that might just be rehashing some old trauma, but that's for you to figure out. That's where you build skills about that stuff. But you do want to pay attention to all of those things, because they're all messages, and they're all going to help you to learn to treat yourself better, to care for yourself, to find the people that are good for you, to do the things that bring you joy, to rest when you need it. I mean, we're really good at not resting, aren't we?
Yeah. I got 4 hours of sleep. Why?
Oh my God. I'm actually in the process of retraining my body to sleep for a complete night. It is a process, but those are the little things. Like your body's like, oh, I need different support because it's not working, or I'm stressed out. Can we please like have a long bath or whatever, go get a massage, whatever the case may be, within your realm and what feels good for you. So I think that those two things are really important. You're following your intuition and paying attention to the body.
And the sooner we can teach our kids that, the better, because then they don't lose it, because they're born with it. They're born little geniuses that with all the confidence that they are amazing and wonderful and kiss themselves in the mirror and the whole bit. And I have, being a mom now, I like really look at what got in the way with me still being that way as a kid. Like, who did I need back then that would have honored that? Who would have let me have my voice? Who would have let me keep that confidence in myself and what my gifts were and what my intuition is? And I think as more mothers get aware of the whole aspect of the being of their child and all of their gifts and every part of how to care for themselves, how to use their agency, how to build resilience, the better the next generation will be. And I think we're on our way, and we have a very interesting world with all the changes that are coming. We're really going to be fighting for this inner world. It really is going to be about your heart and your mind and doing that work, because a lot of the external stuff is going to be easier and easier to take care of. And so I think it's important to understand that we're not just these bodies. We're not just the things, that we are, to be whole, we are spirit, we are body, we are many parts, we are mass, and we're unique. We're all different. And so what works for one person is going to be different. What works for one kid is going to be different. And it's not wrong. It's just different, because each human being is unique. Each person has different gifts. You have gifts I don't have. I have gifts you don't have. There's no value. There's no worth in those things. Each individual has their own unique gift to bring into this world. And as mothers, we get that opportunity to nurture that person into that being if we are intentional, if we are present, if we follow the guide of our heart and our mind and the gifts that we were given. Because we were given our children for a reason. They chose us. And
we did.
And so we got to take care of us so we can take care of them. And I think we've explored that in a beautiful way today, of the things worth, going for resiliently and the things to resist, and that balance of the discovery of who we are truly meant to be in that higher self that we can tap into. So thank you so much, Alexis. I've loved this conversation. Thank you, audience, for being here and for listening. Where can people find you if they want to work with you?
Yes, you can find me on alexisdonkin.com, or I'm on Instagram or TikTok at alexis.donkin. And I love DMs, so send them to me.
DM her. Oh, wait, that one. Thank you for joining us today. Please don't forget to subscribe so we can share this message. We are a worldwide podcast with guests all around the world, and we want to continue to grow this community. You can find us on socials. You could also be a guest. Look for that link below if you'd be interested in being a guest on the podcast. If you know a sponsor or would like to be a sponsor, please reach out to me or Catherine as well.
Sure. We want you all on this journey. We want to hear your stories. We want to share your stories. We want to gain strength from each other, because together we're stronger. And to never forget the blessing of being a mother and what we're creating. We're creating the future every single day of our lives. So get on this train with us and let's do this thing, moms.
I believe in you. Believe in yourself. God bless. And we'll see you around. Take care.